Welcome back, wannabes and creators, to another episode of The Business of Art, the podcast that attempts to demystify business for artists. And today on the program, we have Madeleine Holly-Rosing. Now, Madeleine's a pretty big get for me. She is the creator of Boston Metaphysical Society, and this was one of the books that I used as a model when I was starting my own Kickstarter campaigns. I was trying to build my own career. I was trying to figure out webcomics because I saw her everywhere. Every time I went to a con, she was there. She was sort of this larger-than-life indie creator. And thankfully, when I met her in real life, she was incredibly humble and down-to-earth, and she imparted a ton of amazing wisdom to us. Before we get started, I want to remind you all that this is the last podcast for a while that has an interview. Starting next week, we're going to do all Kickstarter tips in association with our new Kickstarter campaign for Spaceship Broken Needs Repairs. So that's 31 tips on 31 days for our Kickstarter campaign for Spaceship Broken Needs Repairs. Don't forget to check it out at spaceshipbrokenbook.com starting Tuesday. Also, don't forget that we have our Kickstarter course, Crush It on Kickstarter, available to you, loyal listeners, for just $7. This is all the information that used to be behind the paywall at Kickstarter University, brought to you in a course I usually charge $200 for, but for you, loyal listener, it's just $7. If you head on over to thebusinessofart.us/Kickstarter course, you can pick up my course about how to set up, distribute, market, and crush your campaign for just $7. Again, that's thebusinessofart.us/Kickstarter course. And now let's get on to the show. Take it away, Madeleine. What are you passionate about these days?
I'm passionate about working. Working on my stories, whether it be Boston Metaphysical or short stories or novels. I'm actually going to be starting the first Boston Metaphysical novel shortly after I finish the short story. Like a lot of creative people, there's never enough time in the day. And I've been trying very hard to do better in time management because it's very easy to get sucked into social media and get lost in that. And also probably like a lot of indie creators out there, it's probably just you and maybe a partner. So on top of trying to manage a small business, which Boston Metaphysical is at this point, for those of you who see me at cons, I do about 12 to 15 cons a year, and that requires organization, and all that takes time away from the creativity and what I call the working. And the working for me is basically what I'm doing right now in my office. I'm staring up on my cork board that has index cards tacked on. One, of course, is just the initials BMS, which is, of course, short for Boston Metaphysical Society, and all the derivative stories from that, and also another project I've been working on. Actually, it's pretty much finished. It's a middle-grade fantasy novel, which I hope to be, shopping pretty soon. And but yeah, it's always the work. It's always the creativity that I'm passionate about, and probably it's the themes within the work that drive that passion. Which, for those of you who've read the comic or any of the short stories, I deal a lot in classism, social structure, sexism, racism. But hopefully not so much so that I lecture about it, but it's an organic quality to the story itself. I never like to hammer it over people's heads, but I also don't want to ignore it because working in steampunk is to me very fascinating, and I love it because it's a marriage of my own love of history and science fiction. And I've been a sci-fi buff long before I even knew what steampunk was. But there are some issues that come with steampunk because of the time period, which I'm sure you realize. It was in a very colonial, imperialistic time period that a lot of writers have taken over, and some of them have dealt very well with issues of this ilk. Others have chosen to ignore it, but they're still there. It's To me, you can't look at the late 1800s, early 1900s without acknowledging that, a lot of social issues were apparent and still apparent today. Some of them still exist in one form or another. But what's also fascinating about that time period is huge social, cultural, and technological changes. And I think that's what draws people to steampunk, is because it was a time period of exploration and discovery, but also social discovery and cultural discovery. And I really enjoy it when people, other writers and cosplayers and people who really enjoy steampunk take it upon themselves to investigate that world and come up with something new and creative.
Yeah, so one thing you said I want to go back and touch on, because it's one of the things that I think drives my own work, which is this idea that things can be both thought-provoking and entertaining. Do you find that in your own work? Is that a big part of your own work?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know, at some point in my life I became a teacher, not technically a teacher. I've never taught in a grade school or a high school or anything like that, and I certainly don't have an education degree. But I learned earlier in life that the best way to learn something is through storytelling. And it makes it less boring, quite frankly, and you retain the knowledge. If someone just throws out dates at you and, okay, this, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was signed. Well, okay, that's great, but what else was going on that makes that piece of history come alive? And I think you can do the same thing in fiction and use events in your characters' lives as a teachable moment, but not lecture.
Yeah. Do you ever listen to Hardcore History?
No, I haven't.
This is a podcast that talks. That's very long. They'd have a 6-episode. Their most famous one in my mind is they have the 6-episode one about World War I. It's 24 hours long. 6 episodes.
Wow.
It's crazy long, but it is so detailed. And what they do is they tell stories the whole time. And me and my wife actually got me into it. But when we both finished, we looked at each other and like, why did they not talk about this in this way in school? Like, this is incredibly interesting. But like, all they would tell you was like, in 1914, Archduke Ferdinand was killed, and and it's like, it was so boring. But the way that he told these stories like made history come alive, as corny as it sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm editing now a short story it's going to be an anthology. It's actually a Boston Metaphysical short story that tells the story of Duncan the Ghost and how he became a ghost. And you see him in the comic in about, I think, 3 times. He's in the comic, I think, once, and then he's in a couple of the other short stories. But because of the subject matter, I was dealing in a post-Civil War period for the story. I went and researched some of the letters and listened to recordings of ex-slaves. And it's just amazing and thought-provoking to hear, their voices and try to understand that, and then to, bring that into the story and in very tiny bits. I mean, you're not transposing this stuff. It's just stuff that influences the story in small ways.
Yeah, I think that's great about comics, is that you have a finite amount of time, and like the good comics, the ones that I love, and I think the ones that retain somehow pack like 10 layers of meaning in 22 pages.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's what a good comic does. And I came to comics very late, and I know it seems like I've been doing cons like forever, but I've actually only been doing them for 3.5 years. That's it. Um, I had some really good mentors and learned a lot from them, but so I had a lot of catch up to do. And that's one of the reasons I started doing reviews for fan-based press, is so I could catch up and read all this awesome stuff. And it still kind of pisses me off that I didn't know about indie comics earlier in my life, because indie comics are like, they're the best. I have no interest in superhero comics, but indies are just amazing. And but what I really tried to do, even in writing my own, is the art brings one layer, and then the dialogue brings another layer. And when people ask me who are not familiar with graphic novels, well, I've never read one, how do I read a graphic novel? I said, well, you're going to need to read it at least twice, because the first time you're probably going to go through and just read the dialogue, because that's just easy. And people do that all the time. And then you're going to go back and then look at the art in conjunction with the dialogue or the captions or whatever is there. And you're going to see if it's good, it's going to add another layer or two of what's actually going on. And that's one of the things I'm very happy to be working with Emily Hugh, my artist, because she captures emotions and characters. So I don't have to have them say what their emotion is, which is annoying, and too expository. But yeah, if you can get that layered, it takes it to a whole new level. And I think people who are not familiar with comics and graphic novels, and there's many people out there who poo-poo it, thinking it's just for kids, which always makes me laugh. They haven't really taken the time to see the nuances between the art and either the dialogue or the captioning.
I think that's so funny what you say. I think it's so true. But my wife has been reading my comics for years. She hasn't really liked other comics. I don't know if she really liked my comics. She just said she did to encourage me. But I gave her Understanding Comics, Scott McCloud's book, and she looks at me one day in bed as I'm reading, and she goes, "Did you know you're supposed to read the art and the dialogue together?" And I was like, we've now been at this game for 6 years, honey. Yeah, I totally knew that, because she's like, no wonder I never understood any of these books, because I wasn't looking at the pictures. And I was like, what? You're missing like 2/3 of the story if you don't look at the pictures.
Yeah. No, it's funny, but it is a process of education. People who aren't familiar with graphic novels, and not realizing that this is how you're supposed to do it. And
yeah, I want to talk about something that you said before for a second. I'd love to talk about graphic novels all day, but you said something that I definitely want to hit on, which was when you first got into doing this, before you had a project done, you were doing reviews for fan-based press, right?
Well, I started doing reviews while I was writing and producing Boston Metaphysical.
I think that's so smart, because I always tell people, like, just because you don't have any or a lot of work finished doesn't mean you can't start getting your name out there, start getting value, start making connections with websites and other places. And you can do things like doing reviews for these sites while you're trying to build your own fan base. Do you think that had a impact on when you finally were releasing your book?
Absolutely. It gave me credibility. And since I was new to the industry, I knew I needed that credibility, and I also knew I needed to educate myself more. So it was, it worked out really well. I had met Barbara and her husband. This was like 4 years ago. and they were very supportive when we first started out as, launched as a web comic, and helped us get reviews. And then on a whim, I had picked up Stefan Frank's first issue of Silver, and because I'd followed him on Facebook and we became friends, and I really liked it, so I wrote up a little review, and so I sent it to Barbara, and I said, would you consider publishing this review I did? And she says, okay, let me read it. And she says, yeah, no, well, and then she offered me what they call a guest contributor, and then a year later I was up to regular contributor, and not that we get paid or anything, but yeah, it's been amazing. And what's really nice is that the Yan twins, who do Serving Soups, I've been reviewing all the issues. I think they have 4 out now, maybe more. I've only reviewed 4. But we actually became friends because of me doing the reviews for their books. And when I finally met them, it was, for one, it was loads of fun because those guys are hysterical and they're wonderful people. And they just said, thank you for doing the reviews because, one, we know that you actually read the comic when you write the review, and you give us constructive criticism. You tell us what you like, and you also tell us what you don't like, but you frame it in a way that we can sit down and think about it and talk about it, and how can we make this better? So to me, the reviews was successful, and that's what I always try to do in a review is do just that. Try to, always find the positive, and sometimes that's hard.
Right, but that's the point of fan. Not to go back to the interview we did with Fan-Based Press, which you can find by looking in our archives. But I love how they tell you you got to find something positive. If you can't find anything positive, then we're not just going to put the review on it. There's just too much negativity in the world.
Yeah, and in fact, there was one woman. I think she sent me some stuff from overseas to review, and one comic had absolutely no dialogue or captions, and it was basically the story of Baron von Munchausen. I think it is, which is a very, very popular and well-known story in Europe. And when I looked at it, and I emailed her and I said, I got to tell you, I'm not going to be able to give this a good review because, one, no one here in the States is going to understand what you're talking about because no one knows the story here except for a few people. And without any dialogue or captioning, I was lost. And so she said, thank you very much. And so I just didn't do it. But if I run across something where I just can't find anything good, I will email them directly and say, okay, this is how I feel. I'm not going to lie to you, but I have a real problem with this. And if you don't want me to write the review, I won't. And then they're usually happy that I contacted them ahead of time.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that because sometimes I get reviews. I just did a book a few months ago about called My Father Didn't Kill Himself, about a girl whose father commits suicide and she sets out to hell. It's 2 books together, and she sets out to prove that it's a murder because she can't stand the thought of losing him. And one of the things that there's a scene in there where one of the main character goes in and finds her best friend drunk and this guy trying to rape her, and other people, she's trying to help, and these people gather around and they're basically not necessarily chanting him on, but certainly not helping. And the person wrote the review and was like, this is great, but I have a son and boys don't act like that. And I was like, why not? Why even do if you're going to have a problem with this one section, of which there are boys that act like that, I know because I've met them, but this is about one person's experience, and you're clearly bringing this thing to this review.
Yeah, and even if I notice that there is something personal that that I think just may be my personal thing, I actually put that in the review. And I'll just say like, hey, this is probably me, but, I didn't, this didn't jibe with me or this didn't quite, but, this could just be me and someone else may have a totally different viewpoint on this particular section. I mean, I actually say that this may be me, guys, but this is how I feel,
I want to talk about reviewing. We could talk about reviewing all day too, but I want to talk about how that reviewing helped, because it sounds like as you were reviewing for that first year and into you made a lot of connections with these creators. So like you could show them your work and they can help you either get it better or maybe expand it to their audience. But you were providing value to them first before you were really asking, or not even asking, just showing them what you were doing. And to me, that's the number one thing when I coach people. I always say, like, you have to switch this mindset and start providing value to people before you ask them anything, and with no expectation of anything coming back. Could you talk a little bit about how that worked when you were building your own fan base?
Yeah, I know when I'm doing the reviews, I certainly didn't expect anything back. That never, other than, to educate myself by reading comics that were better than mine and hoping to learn from them. But it, like I said, it did add to my credibility, and eventually the networking did help in respect, particularly when I started launching the Kickstarters. That helped a lot, because even if they couldn't say back the project, a lot of these folks would retweet and repost, which is always, obviously critical as well. And some of these folks actually ended up coming to my Kickstarter class and buying the book, Kickstarter for the Independent Creator. And so, yeah, it all just kind of moves out there slowly. But I would have to agree. I mean, you should start out with the expectation of nothing, and slowly it starts trickling in. It is interesting is that now some things are, after 3.5 years working cons and doing the reviews and being out there for people, is that now, some things are coming back towards me, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, I mean that's what it takes a long time. Like, these are long lead items, right? Like, it's like SEO on your website. Like, yes, SEO is important. Yes, you should focus on it from the beginning, but it ain't going to pay off for like a year. So you can't, or 2 years or 3 years down the road. But you need to be working on it now. Yeah, no, it does. I mean, like this year, I was asked to give a seminar at the Scriptwriters Network on, crowdfunding basics, which I'm doing next month. I did that same seminar in January.
Oh, there you go. And then I was invited to do a lunch lecture at DreamWorks in October. It's an in-house education program that they have for their artists, where I'm going to talk about crowdfunding. And, this stuff comes around slowly.
Yeah, but once it starts coming in, it's weird how that trickle comes through. Once things start getting through the funnel, there's sort of this continuous effort of getting through. It's just like you have to build that momentum first. Yes.
And it helped quite a bit that I wrote the book, which clearly needed to be written. I mean, the impetus for that was that I had seen so many awesome projects just do the crash and burn on Kickstarter, and it's because people weren't prepared. And as I mentioned before, I never expected to be a teacher, but in almost every job I've ever had, I was the person they pulled out to send to some seminar, to come back and then teach everyone else in the company what I learned. And so I'm just very accustomed to breaking things down in a digestible format so you can learn it and not be completely overwhelmed.
Right. So I want to talk about your book, Kickstarter for the Independent Creator, as the next thing. But you said the magic word, which was Kickstarter. The magic words Kickstarter. I'm obsessed with Kickstarter. Uh, um, so I want to go backtrack and talk about the build up from the first Kickstarters until the book. Can you talk about when did you start using Kickstarter as a platform?
In 2013, we launched our first Kickstarter, and that was for a huge amount. It was for $25K. We'd had 3 issues completed, and the idea behind that was to pay for the production of the next 3 issues and put together a beautiful trade for everybody, and get everybody paid. That didn't work out.
How much did you raise on that one?
About a little over $7,000, like 72, 73, something like that, which wasn't bad, but clearly not enough. But I went back and realized that a lot of things had changed on Kickstarter in 2013, where we had launched in October. Prior to 2013 and even in early 2013, a lot of backers were just throwing money at Kickstarter because it was the new hot, shiny thing. And I think by the end of 2013, and in fact a lot of the articles I read after that, people were feeling burned. They hadn't gotten the rewards from stuff. They were being much more picky about who they backed. They wanted to see more accountability, and so I said, okay, let's back it up here and break it up into smaller bits. And we re-strategized, and we meaning my husband and I, because he's the one who's got to deal with me when I'm running a Kickstarter, which is,
I know. I'm married too. I know.
Yeah.
You can say it to the audience, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things you have to prep if you're married before the Kickstarter, and a lot of things can't, there can't be any weird things going on while that's going on. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. So decided to break it up into individual issues, and so we relaunched 3 months later for a $3,000 goal of just to print issue 3. That's it. It was ready to go, and we were fully funded in under 48 hours. And the main difference then is that I had a dedicated, email backer list that I could shoot to them immediately, so they got on board, very, very quickly. It just, people were more comfortable, I think, with a smaller number as well.
Yeah, well, you were probably going to get it done, right? And you had it done. I mean,
it was done. It was done. It just needed to go to the printer.
I mean, that's the most important part for me. For a Kickstarter is like, hey, is the book done? It's done. Okay, now I'm going to consider. If it's not done, oh man, you've got a long way to go to convince me to get this Kickstarter funded.
And we actually made as much as we did, actually a little bit more than we did in the first one, and managed to get a stretch goal for issue 4. So those people got such a deal.
So they got issue 3 and 4?
They got issue 3 and 4 because we made like 4 stretch goals. Yeah, they got a huge deal. And it was a little late in delivery, maybe by a couple months because Emmy got sick. No, that was issue 5, but it wasn't that bad. In Kickstarter time, all mine were pretty much on time.
I mean, that's like a year, right? I mean, to me, it's like if you can get the Kickstarter out in like a year from when you finished it,
yeah,
you are okay. But certainly, like if you have to do it by the time you have your next Kickstarter launch, like you can't.
Absolutely, you should have already delivered those rewards before you launch your next one. I think it's really presumptuous to start asking for more money when you haven't delivered.
My slide trick, we did Katrina Hates the Dead around this time last year, and I knew I was going to launch my next one like right after I delivered. So like we had an insert inside the book when we shipped it that said go here and back our next Kickstarter. So everyone got it. Then they had then like 2 weeks later we had launched the next book.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, that's ideal when you want to do that. and if you can do that. Um, and then there is one thing I do, and I teach this in my class as well, for running a Kickstarter. And I have backed like 80 some odd Kickstarters, and I would say out of all of those, only maybe 10 to 15 actually sent me a thank you, either a message through Kickstarter or on Twitter, a personalized one. And that's one thing I teach everyone in my class, and it's in the book too. Is like every evening I go through Kickstarter and I send a thank you to every single person who backed that day. It could be a cut and paste. It could be something simple like, "You rock, thanks for backing, Madeleine." It doesn't matter. It's just a little something. And in fact, in my last class, I had a young lady who was in the middle of her Kickstarter, and she'd already was funded. She was doing very, very well. But after the class, about the third to fourth week, she started seeing people pull out. And I said, "Did you send your thank you notes?" And she went, "No." And I said, "Start." And it took her a while because she had a lot of backers, but it stemmed the tide. When she started doing it, they stopped pulling out.
Yeah, well, don't you think it's all about the personalized connection? I mean, to me, the way for an independent creator to be successful, an independent artist to be successful, is to find out how to make a one-on-one connection. And Kickstarter is great to make that one-on-one connection. It is only one way to make a one-on-one connection. But if someone has given you money, then you don't say, "Thank you so much." Like then they've given their part of of like their, "Hey, here's $5," and you've given them, the old finger.
Yeah, I mean, it is a thing I teach. It's like, these people have given you their money. It could be only $1. It doesn't matter. They gave you money, so you do need to be accountable for it, and you need to be gracious about it. I was very fortunate in San Diego Comic-Con 2 weeks ago. Longtime fan. He usually just reads it online and then throws a few bucks my way, but I know he retweets like crazy and clearly loves the comic. I finally got to meet him, and it was just so exciting. It was so great, and I tell everybody, all backers, I'm going to be at this con. Come say hi. And they already have all my stuff, so they're not going to buy anything, but I want them to come by and say hi.
Well, that's how you build like a rabid fan base, is by acting like each of them are human beings. I mean,
absolutely. And now I sent, for those who already have all my stuff until I have new stuff, they'll go like, "God, do you know anything else I should go check out?" And I'm going like, "Yeah, go check out, Skies of Fire. You like diesel punk, steampunk, go check that out. You're going to love it." And they go like, "Ooh, ooh, ooh," and they can run over there and buy Ray's stuff. So I'm happy to refer to people, especially those I admire. Which, by the way, if you haven't seen Skies of Fire, it is pretty awesome. You should go check it out. And if you like kids stuff that are more, was it Sally Sprocket and Pistol Pete?
Oh yeah, they'll be Alejandro will be at our event.
Alejandro, yeah.
Yeah, he'll be at our event this weekend, which is in the future now, but in the past at Comic Bug.
Yeah. I mean, and he has for a kids comic, it's absolutely delightful. An all family kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to me, we just did, when we were at Comic-Con 2 weeks ago, we had an indie passport, which was basically the exact design, but in small press or like independent press, where we had a little passport. We all had little stamps. And the whole point was, "Oh, you like my stuff? Well, you will like that stuff. Oh, you don't like my stuff? You'll like that stuff." Like, and to be able to guide people so that they got what they wanted, because that's the point. I mean, people want to buy things. I mean, we're a consumerist society. They want to buy things, but they want to buy what they want. And people have this sort of like very short-sighted view where like, well, if they don't want my stuff, then screw them. But if you
that's extremely short-sighted. I taught my husband how to sell because occasionally he works WonderCon in San Diego with me because I just can't do those by myself. They're too big, and he does an excellent job. And but one thing, I've told him is that even if no one buys anything, I want them to walk away from the table happy, that they had a good time, they had a good conversation, because you don't know who they are, you don't know who they're going to talk to, because they may run into a friend or a producer or whatever out there and say like, hey, this wasn't really my thing, but it might be yours, and she was really nice, and we had this great conversation, so you should go check out her table. I mean, how hard is that?
It's not just like we said. It's treating people like they're human beings and not just pocketbooks. And it's amazing what happens if you just treat people with a little common courtesy instead of like, oh, you don't want my thing? Well, whatever. I don't care. Like I always try and ask, oh, do you like this thing? This thing? Oh, nothing? Well, what are you looking for? Maybe I can point you in the right direction. And hopefully someone else will say that, oh, you really like weird, like monster things? Well, that's your guy back there.
Yeah, and I think I've done that with Kickstarter as well. And I talk to people and refer them to other projects that are either going on at the same time mine was, or later on I might send up an update saying like, hey, you guys like mine, and I think you might really like this other person's, which is great cross-promotion, which is another thing I talk about in my class and in my book, is cross-promotion, which is very, very helpful to any Kickstarter or any crowdfunding campaign.
Or any campaign at all. I mean, this is what this affiliate fee or this cross-promotion is what internet marketing is built on. Like, I will introduce you to my audience. You introduce me to your audience, and then we'll both be stronger because of it.
We both benefit. It's a win-win.
All right, life is not a zero-sum game. It's a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah. No, it's definitely it's a win-win, and I mean that's how I approach everything. Even the classes I teach at LA Fitness, and so people have the skills and the building blocks they need to go forth and be happy and healthy.
Right, because that's what I mean, at the end of the day, don't you think that like the attitude of I want everyone to win at the end of the day brings back more than like having a zero sum? Like I could sell my 10%. Like I'm going to sell 1 to 2% of any con of people that come by. That's what I'm going to do. But if I let those other 97%, 98% of people just go without giving them a good experience, or like we talked about, treating them like a human, or making sure they have a good experience, then next time they'll never stop by my table, or next time they'll tell other people not to stop by my table, or next time they won't even come up my row, or next time like everyone is going to be like, oh man, I don't want a table next to that guy because like he just does nothing but bark at people all day. As opposed to, I've had so many people now, having done this for a little bit less time than you, but a couple years, where they say, oh, I saw you at WonderCon, I saw you at Comic-Con, I saw you at Comikaze, I didn't stop by your table because you were busy, or just it looks stupid at that point, but like you were nice, so now I'm stopping by, and they eventually buy or don't
something.
buy.
Yeah. It was kind of funny at Comic-Con because there's a guy I think who stopped by like not just at San Diego but in others, and who'd been kind of following along. And then when I said the series is done now. All 6 issues are out. This story arc is complete. He's like, oh really? Okay, I'll get it. And he would stop by occasionally at other cons and stuff, and we'd chat for a little bit, and then finally that's what he was waiting for it all to be done. But I at least was nice enough to him each time he came by that he wanted to come back. which is really great.
Well, this is what I learned in sales, working at different sales organizations, big, small, is if you just go in treating everyone like a human being and trying to help those people, that person that you're talking to may not buy anything from you. But somehow it all evens out. Like I've lost 50 line deals that for someone I talked to for 3 months, or $1,000, $10,000, $100,000 deals. And then somehow like someone I talked to for 3 minutes over here like comes in and fills that gap just because I treat everybody with that sort of basic level of human decency, which it seems kind of odd we even have to talk about, honestly.
Yeah. But I mean, part of it just has to do with sales skills, and I think some people don't realize they are being rude or standoffish, and sales is not easy. I don't consider myself to be a natural salesperson. It was learned, and I don't particularly enjoy selling. I enjoy talking to the people, and so that's what I try to do. I try to engage them in a conversation and not do a whole salesy thing, because for one, that's just not me, and two, I just, who wants to listen to that? But I tell them the story. I engage them in stories about some of the characters, because as you know, we have some historical icons in the comic, like Tesla and Granville Woods and Bell and some others. So it's always fun to be able to trade information like that and engage them. But you also have to stand up and make eye contact and have a pleasant appearance. And I think some people, it's just hard for them. And I almost think that I need to be teaching a class in, how to run a table sometimes. And in fact, I've been asked that a couple of times. But I think at some of the panels and a panel like you were talking about, doing a creator type con, is having a panel of, a role playing how to run a table.
Oh man, you just wait. Just keep following the podcast, because that's our next course, is going to be how to run a table, actually.
Okay, there you go.
Because it's like so. But let's talk about Kickstarter, which is like the specialty
yes.
that you have. Which, I mean, part of it is conning, because conning is how you build an email list. But why do so many good Kickstarters fail?
Lack of preparation. A lot of them do not have the fan base yet to launch. They don't understand that those first 3 days are critical, and that you need to have a core email list of people who you are 99.9% sure that they are going to back your project, and you have to have enough people who you think that are in that 99% sure that will fund 25 to 35% of your funding goal in those first 3 days. You have to have that lockdown. I
talked to somebody today, and he said, "Do you think $2,500 is enough or is a good number for like this project? I'm trying to do one issue." And I was like, "I have no idea, because I have no idea what your fan base is. None. Like you could be underperforming, it could be overperforming. I have no idea."
Well, it actually comes back to something more basic than that. Is what's his budget, and how you're not going to know his budget is. You don't know what his costs are. He needs to break down the budget of how many copies is he going to print, how much is that going to cost, what is the shipping going to cost, what are the extras going to cost, and is that $2,500 big enough for all of that? I mean, you've got to break down that budget and include packing materials. I mean, there's a host of things that need to be done, and it takes months of planning. When we launched, what was it, last year, year before last? The years are going by so fast now. I guess the year before last, I know I had started planning in January for a launch in October. And I would just do little things just to get it together. And I'd even tweet it out. I said, okay, just finished the posted spreadsheet for the Kickstarter in October, you know?
Right.
And because you have to weigh everything. You've got to do prototypes. You've got to get it all in line to find out how much. So it goes back to even more basic than that. What's his budget? He's got to go figure all those numbers out. And that's going to tell him if that $2,500, and you're right, there's no way you're going to know because you don't know what his budget is.
Right. I have no idea how many people.
You have no idea.
I have none. And so, like, yes, I've seen single issues raise $35,000, and I've seen single issues raise $30.
Yeah.
I don't like. There's no way to know. I've seen whole books raise like $1,000. I've seen whole books raise $100,000. You have no idea what to do until you plan. So how do we go about not the budgeting, but how do you go about the audience building basics so that you have enough people? Are you doing it through shows? Are you doing it through social media? Where do you think the strength should be focused?
Well, I think it's a combination, and it's something I talk about in my book as well. I have a good friend, George Wasall. He and I actually developed our stories together in the same class, and he's horrible at social media. I mean, he sucks at it. And he launched a Kickstarter for I think 12.5, something like that. Ended up making $14,000. But you have to understand, George was doing 30 cons a year, and he would proudly say to me, and he should be proud, that he may only have 500 likes on his Facebook page, but he's shaken the hand of all 500 of those people. He's made that personal connections. Now, what I talk about in the book is most of us can't afford to do 30 cons in 1 year. He's retired, and this is just what he does because he loves to do this. Even 15 is a lot, and it's pretty much my max, I think. So it's a combination of, yes, doing cons, even signing events at your local comic book store or bookstore, but you've got to have that sign-up sheet right there, on the table. And so many people don't have that there. So how are you going to capture that information?
Why are people so reticent to have an email list, do you think?
I think they feel, one, it's a lot of work because you got to go type that stuff in. It's a pain. And also, you're asking for a bit of personal information. And the thing that I tell people, which is absolutely true, when they sign up and I say, oh, would you like to sign up for our email list? I said, I promise I won't spam you. I don't have time. And more often than not, people say, like, that is the best sales pitch for me to sign up. Because I said, I don't have time. I said, in 2 weeks, you'll get an email from me asking you if you'd like to sign up for my newsletter, because I do a double opt-in for my newsletter, just so everybody wants to be signed up is signed up. And then I said, if that's totally optional, if otherwise, you'll only hear from me if there's something major like a Kickstarter, new book, something major going on. Then they said, oh, okay, that's cool. And so I get people to sign up. But then you have to take the time, of course, to go type it in and, send the email out 2 weeks. And, I have my newsletter is going to go out. It's like a bi-monthly thing that includes the reviews that I do for Fanbase, along with a lot of other stuff and con wrap-ups and pictures. And I have a writer's corner and all sorts of fun stuff. But
sounds like a fun mailing list. I want to be a part of that mailing list.
I can send you the link. You can sign up.
I want that. So I'm going to change your life really quickly at shows.
Yes.
If you have MailChimp, if you have a smartphone, you can use MailChimp Subscribe, and you never have to enter things again, ever. Like they enter it on their phone. You never have to enter.
Isn't that a new thing?
So it used to be called Chimpity Doo about a year ago or 2 years, a year ago that they started, but they changed it to MailChimp Subscribe. It's on your phone. They have an app on your phone, and I have a little cheap tablet that I actually use because a lot of things don't have wireless connection, so it's offline. And then I export it every night, if it's a multi-day con, to my email. And then at the end of the con, I upload it into, I don't use MailChimp for that specific purpose. I use a program called Sendinblue because it does automation and a bunch of other stuff. But I never have to worry that the email was that I can't read anything. I never have to worry about typing it in. We got about 250 at Comic-Con, and that would have taken me days to type in.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. I seem to recall seeing that about MailChimp. It was a new thing, and yeah, I'll have to see if we've got like a little a tablet that we can designate for that. Which is great that you captured that many. I have seen, like my friend George, have someone do that on his phone, but it's interesting in that I have seen people are more reluctant to type it into a tablet or a phone, but they seem to be happier writing it down.
Oh, I haven't found that. I found people hate writing it down when I hand it, because I hand it to them. Like once they're done with the book, I hand them a little button, a free button, and then I hand them the tablet and say, hey, do you want that button? You guys sign up for your email. Nothing else, just email address. And people do it without even thinking. Like they don't have to bend down. It's brought to them. It's handed to them. It's already in their hand. They have a button in their hand they don't want to lose, so they sign up.
Yeah, that's interesting. But what I've also seen is that people have come to my table. They haven't bought anything, but they'll say like, oh, I want more information about this. And then they go, boom, yeah.
So in that respect, then I still give them the free button for signing up for their mailing list, even if they don't buy.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. No, that's time to evolve to that. I like that.
I started with the regular written sign up, and I swear 40% of them I couldn't read. Like I just was like, what's even the point of doing it? And then like another like 30% I could barely read, but then it would bounce, and like so I ended up, if I got 10 people to sign up, like one of them would actually be a real email address.
Yeah, I guess I'm better at reading people's writings than you. I don't have that big of a bounce rate, but I obviously do have a bounce rate. But yeah, I think only about 5 or so bounced from San Diego, which is pretty good. But no, that works. I like it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the advantage of having the one that sign up is if you're not there, you can, like, someone could still sign up theoretically if they wanted to. Whereas, like, if at my table, if I'm not there for some reason, like, the tablet's not out.
Yeah, you can't leave the tablet out, obviously. But no, that's a great aside and great. Thank you for that. I will go look into that. But the other way to look for backers, obviously we mentioned cons, signings, Facebook, social media. Start making friends with other creators, and don't hammer them with like, come see my comic. I mean, it's like, ask them a real question, or just say, or give them a compliment. Say like, hey, I just saw this. This is awesome. I like the coloring. I like whatever. Or I like, pick one, and just retweet generously. Have real conversations on Facebook, and you'll start gaining more backers there. Start joining, and particularly with comics. I'm sure you're already part of, like, there's a gazillion comic groups on Facebook.
And they're not like the book ones. Like, they actually are pretty active.
They're active. Yeah, the book ones are like, I don't even bother with, because they're just like, come like my Facebook page. Like, I don't care about your Facebook page. The comic ones range from, I have a new page up, but also it's like, oh, have you seen this article? Or, have you seen this, or have you seen that? Or I have a question about coloring, or I'm looking for an artist, or, it's all of that. So you can engage on a lot of different levels with people and make friends.
Yeah, you said something really interesting before that I want to touch on before we get out of here, which is I love that you had this big book. And then, well, I mean, I don't love that you didn't get it funded the first time. That sucks. But, like, I love that you then were like, well, maybe we can't do the dream now. Like, maybe let's do, like, the one issue. I always tell people that they don't have to do their dream project on Kickstarter first. If they have a very small audience, if they think 10 people are going to donate to their campaign, then find a project that you can do that's going to be good that 10 people can fund, and then work from there. But at least you have one baseline first. So many people try to do like their master $100,000 project first, and it leaves me scratching my head.
Yeah, same thing here. I mean, our third Kickstarter was to fund actually the art and the printing for Chapter 5, and because we had been pretty much self-funding, and so we were looking for $7,500, and we made it, and it was a little tight just because I launched in August, which was idiotic. I'll never do that again. People were on vacation, just people weren't home. We ended up making 82 something, but we really had to manage that, but we made it. And then the last one too, which was just to print issue 6, I think we were fully funded in a week, which was fine. It was for $3,500, which is kind of that's what I kind of would have expected.
Right. Well, people always see that these campaigns are doing $50,000, and I'm like you, like I mean, I don't know how much all of your campaigns made, but like my campaigns generally fund for about $35,000 to $5,000. Like, these are not massive campaigns, but they're enough to keep the lights on, to pay the bills, and to print books, and to go to kind of be able to continue doing this thing. Like, you can do it by having a bunch of smaller campaigns and then building the rest of it. I mean, that's sort of how I consider Kickstarter, sort of like when a publisher puts a pre-order for a book. Like, they're not trying to fund everything from that book. They just want like enough to pay the print run, and so that it makes sense for them to distribute the whole thing.
Yeah, and that's what the book and the class focuses on. I mean, the book and the class focus on folks who are looking to make under 10K, because if you're looking for the larger numbers, it's a different organizational dynamic. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, and they think they can just run a $50,000 campaign by themselves, and you can't. You need a team, and you need team members who have designated jobs and who are working this thing 24/7. There's no way around that unless you're girl genius. There's some people who could throw anything out there and they're going to make it because they have such a huge fan base and they have such quality work. It's going to be a no-brainer for them. But for the rest of us, no, we kind of have to work at it.
Right, absolutely.
Because we have much, much smaller fan bases. As I jokingly tell my husband, I said, I have a small but very ardent fan base, because not everyone likes steampunk, and that's fine.
But you don't need the great thing about the internet is you don't need an enormous audience in order to make a career at doing it. You just need an ardent fan base. Like, what do they say?
Yeah.
A thousand fervent backers giving $100 a year is $100,000.
Yeah.
So that's not a huge amount. I mean, even 10,000 people giving $10 is $100,000, and that's still not very much. I mean, that ain't Stephen King numbers. So I want to talk about one more thing before we get out of here. I know. I promise one more thing, and then we'll wrap up. Because you did something incredibly smart, what they tell you to do in business books, which is you become an expert in something by doing something. Maybe it's in your field or not. For you, you started doing comics, and then you became a Kickstarter expert, and then you launched a book to help launch sort of a speaking and other and teaching career. Like, that's very, very smart, because that's basically textbook business school. Can you talk a little bit about that? Is that what your plan was at the end?
Well, I had never, when we started running Kickstarters, it never occurred to me to write a book. After the third Kickstarter, it dawned on me that a book was needed and that there was a niche that needed to be filled, and I could fill it. And obviously, I didn't tell anyone I was writing the book other than my husband, because I knew there was a lot of other very capable people out there who could write a book similar to that, and I wanted to get the jump on them. I didn't want anyone to get the jump on me, so to speak. And so I, cranked it out and, had it edited, and I know a second edition will be out next year, because there has to be. I mean, it's a constant evolving process, and so you can't just let it sit, because things change, technology changes, and how people perceive crowdfunding changes. And so I just saw there was an opportunity here to essentially help fund the comic. I mean, that was the grand motivation. It's like, okay, the comic's doing okay, but we really need to get more money in to keep going. And this is something I knew I could do. I knew I could write this book, and I knew there was a market for it there. And Mike at Pulp Fiction Books, where I first started teaching the class, he and I talked like a couple years ago, and he was very interested in starting classes because he has a loft over in Culver City in his store. And I said, I can teach these classes. And he says, okay. And he's been a great partner. He's totally awesome. And so it used to be like every other month, but that was too much. And so now it's maybe 3 times a year that I teach over there. And otherwise I do other speaking engagements and panels and whatever.
I love it.
But
It's like the classic. It's the classic business story in like told in comics. So that's what I'm always looking for in a guest is, hey, how do you take these business concepts and bring them to comics? And you have done that thing.
Yeah, almost by accident, but I did. I saw there was a real niche because I wasn't trying to compete with Kickstarter for Dummies or all these other books, which are very good, by the way, who are saying like, oh, make $100,000, make $150,000. Like, no, I just want to approach people who want their $3,500 so they can go make their comic book, and put it into simple language, step by step, so it's not overwhelming and it's very clear. And I guess the message must be getting across because I think we have like 16 5-star reviews on Amazon now, and
it's pretty awesome. 4 more, and they start including you in their newsletter.
Oh,
wait, sorry, it's not newsletter. That's 50. 20 to 25 is they start doing the also, like, you bought this, you may also like this, or something like that.
Yeah,
like, that's the 50. It's a long way to go, but it's not that far for 20 to 25, and it is a great book.
Thank you. It's just some of them were just so overwhelming. They were like tomes. They were like hundreds and hundreds of pages long. It's like no one can comprehend all that. It's too much. This is just for...
It's focused on somebody who's just one guy in their room or one girl writing comics and making comics, and they just want to make their stupid comic. They don't need 50 grand. They just need a couple grand. They just want enough so they can make the next one.
That's correct. And what's nice about it is that the strategies also apply to any independent creator, whether it be plushies or widgets or a book, if you're doing a memoir, a fiction book, the strategies are the same. Though, yes, I do use references to comics. The strategies are about, you still want your video under 3 minutes, You still want your text to be clear and organized. And because I've had a number of people buy it who are makers, who make plushies, who are artists, who not just they're illustrators and make little bobbleheady dolls or something. and it's been interesting that it's gone across this market, which it should. I mean, those strategies apply. It doesn't matter.
Right, and the nice thing is the Kickstarter strategy is also applied to every business because that's how I learned how to do business. Like, what do they say? Kickstarter is like business 101 for hippies.
Yeah.
So let's get out of here by talking about the what's next for you. Where can we find you next? What shows? Remember, this is going to go out sort of the middle of this month, which is August. So where can we find you from the middle of August onward?
At the end of August, I will be at Comic-Con Palm Springs at the Palm Springs Convention Center. And then 2 weeks after that, I'm in Rose City in Portland, Oregon. And then Long Beach. And then I think I have, I have the Scriptwriter Network. I have 2 teaching engagements, both at Pulp Fiction and at the Scriptwriters Network, talking about crowdfunding. And then I think it's, the Santa Clarita Gaslight Gathering in San Diego. And for those of you who like steampunk, Gaslight is awesome. It's small. It's intimate. They get awesome guests that you can actually like pull up a chair and say hello to. Gail Carriger is going to be the guest of honor, which in steampunk world is huge. She's massive in steampunk world. She's an author. If you're not familiar with her work, she does the Solus and the Parasol Protectorate series. Very fun. And then
that's a lot of things.
I know.
That's a very lot of things. Do you have a place online? Like where? So let's talk about where we can find you online.
It's easier if you just go to the website, which is www.bostonmetaphysicalsociety.com. And in the blog, there's a list of all the events I will be at. And also there's a page on that website for the Kickstarter class. They'll give you information on that. It's $40, both at Pulp Fiction and Scriptwriters Network. And I'll also be doing the Pasadena art show at the library.
Oh, me too.
Pasadena Library.
Oh, we're going to go to all the same things. Okay, so let's get out of here.
There.
Well, I'll be there at Santa Clarita. I'll be at Long Beach. I'll be at Santa Clarita. I'll also be at the Pasadena thing. So I'll see you all the time. So let's get out of here with the question we always end on, or the statement we always end on, which is, give me your best piece of parting advice that you haven't given already, how we can find you online, reiterate the website and the social media links you have, and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay. Best piece of advice, if you're a writer or an aspiring writer, is to get your butt in the chair and write. And even if it's bad, it's better to write badly at first than to not write at all, because you can always go back and rewrite. And you can find me, like I said, on my website, also on social media. I have a Facebook page, Boston Metaphysical Society. And I'm on Twitter at mholly-rosing. That's MHOLLYROSING. And I think that's it. Did I miss something?
I don't know. If we did, I'll link it in the show notes. But thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, thank you.
So that was Madeleine Holly-Rosing. She dropped all the knowledge bombs. What I love about that interview was a lot of Kickstarter experts, most, if not all Kickstarter experts, talk about the high end, which is $10,000 and up, $50,000 up, $100,000 and up. And Madeleine focuses her energy on creators who are just trying to raise a few $1,000s to get their book printed. And I love that because there is a niche. And that is what was great about this interview. You saw somebody who saw a niche and filled it. Somebody who is classically an expert in what she does. So much so that you could run a case study on her. She started by building a webcomic and then using Kickstarter successfully. And then she decided to become authority, or she did become an authority. And at the end of the day, she wrote a book about her experience as an expert, and that has led to speaking engagements, that has led to all sorts of other possibilities and new income streams. So I love that. You're literally watching somebody in the comics field live what they teach you to live in all business, which is start a company, become an expert in that field, and then use that expertise to write a book and then become an expert on the speaking engagement circuit. That's an entire track in business, and you're watching it unfold in comics right before your eyes. If you like this podcast episode, please go to thebusinessofart.us/iTunes/Stitcher or /play. Subscribe, like, and review the podcast today. It is the best way for us to find new fans and help more people. And don't forget, starting next Tuesday, we are launching our new Kickstarter campaign. And that campaign, oh brother, that campaign is going to involve 31 Kickstarter tips over 31 days on this very podcast. I'm going to shout it out on Periscope, Facebook Live, and Snapchat in the morning, direct you to the podcast to tell you why that tip is important. And then, of course, we're going to direct you to the Kickstarter as well, but not before we impart value bombs every single day. So I hope you'll stick around for that. I hope you'll come back, and I will see you next time, wannabes and creators.